Hello everybody, I'm Michael Brown, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how liberalism helps create interdependence between states. First, we're going to talk about liberalism and kind of review that since it's been a while in the semester since we've talked about that, but also talk about the opposing approach of mercantilism and how that kind of damages the economy more than if everything was just liberalized. So first, for liberalism, we have talked about earlier in the semester how it kind of looks to benefit everybody, from the importers, exporters, the firms and their workers, and the standard of living. This is because they are motivated by their self-individual interests and through specialization. So through specialization, it allows for the firms in these countries to produce what they do the most efficiently and then trade for what they make, because they will gain more in doing that compared to where if they just made the products inefficiently. So by doing this, the major thing that is done is through free trade. So no tariffs, no anything, little to no involvement between the government agencies, because since these economic gains can bring in more money for these firms, they can then pay the workers more, which then can lead to a higher standard of living because they also have a more disposable income, which then they can buy more products, which can help boost the economy. But because of this specialization, the countries must be able to rely on each other and have this trust for everybody, because they're trading for items that they need but they're not making, which actually helps everybody, even the smaller countries, to where, say, if America was trading with a smaller economy like Peru, they're both seeing these gains because they are getting products that they're not making themselves. This is the exact opposite of mercantilism. Mercantilism, they're more motivated by power. Their trade is used to maintain or increase this power because they want to control the market themselves. They want to operate at a trade surplus, which means that they are exporting more than they are importing. Their trade is strategic and monitored, which means they use tariffs and quotas and sometimes even subsidies to bail out companies. But tariffs are, as we know, they're taxes on imports from other countries, and then quotas is just limiting the amount of imports that they are having, because they want to just focus on themselves. They don't have to rely on anybody and use this approach. And then this leads to a sense of protectionism. So as I talked about a little earlier with subsidies, it leads to, say, if like the agriculture business, if they're struggling, or one of the major industries such as the automotive industry in 2008 with GM being bailed out, they're actually using the money from these tariffs to try to bail them out, which is cutting down on the efficiency and not letting the market take control of the situation for these economic gains. A huge example of this is the trade war that we are currently in with China. As of right now, or as of 2019, we were $345.6 billion with a B dollars in debt to them. Part of this is because since the 1980s, trade has massively increased between the two countries, but mostly it's because China doesn't really respect the intellectual properties of the US companies. So when these US companies were working overseas trying to get patents from the Chinese government was going behind their back and giving this information to the home country, to the home companies, and then they were stealing these ideas for these products and then undercutting the price through currency manipulation. So to help combat this, when Trump came into office, he instituted 25% tariffs on some of their imports, which then really upset the Chinese, which then led them to issue tariffs of their own. And we've had 3 or 4 different rounds of this, of just everybody trying to just flex their muscles and show like who's the top dog in the economy, which has actually harmed us even more because it's led to less competition between the two and has kind of created a monopoly for both items domestically. For the US is trying to push American-made products onto the Americans, which limits the amount of competition that is done, raises the price for everybody, which makes it harder for the companies to compete. Which is why, coming up to my last point, which is why to help fix this, instead of trying to issue more tariffs and digging a deeper hole between the two countries and making trade less desirable, they need to liberalize their free trade. So some of the benefits of free trade is that it's mutually beneficial. Countries don't need to enter into a trade war because there's little to no involvement and they can just trade what each other is specializing in. Also, it limits the amount of military presence that is needed, because instead of having to go to war for these resources, they can just trade them freely. Another example of this would be America with the Middle East for oil resources, when they can just trade the two back and forth instead of having going on to war. This leads to lower prices for the consumer because it's eliminating this monopoly of power for everybody and allowing, which liberalism wants, the self-interest of the individual. It allows them to choose which one they're using because there are cheaper prices, which means that there's an increase in competition since there's more people inside of the market, that the companies have to be more efficient if they want to stay relevant. A very common question is, through specialization, what happens to the companies that are not being specialized in? Well, the companies that are being specialized, they will start to fill the void of these companies that are leaving, which means that since these companies are getting bigger, they're still going to need workers. So these workers can just move into an industry that better suits them, and they'll have to compete for the jobs. But the better that the economy is doing, the more opportunities that they will have for these jobs. And lastly, with the best protection for these workers, instead of having to do bailouts and everything like that and spending more government money, is just moving to an open economy to where it gives them multiple options. Because I know in some states, they're doing rent controls, which that harms the landlord and everything. They're doing forcing like higher minimum wage than some states, which leads to companies having to try to sell more and everything, and it's just harming them even more, to where if they just allowed for the individuals to pick the best places for them to work, it would benefit the economy a lot more. So in conclusion, having a protectionist kind of approach to the economy actually harms them more than allowing just the invisible hand of the market to take control and control prices, and allowing people to choose what's best for them, and also for free trade, allowing countries to specialize and trade more efficiently than if they just made the product themselves. Thank you.